Hey guys, it's Brant, and I'm back with another video in the series of Off the Soundboard, and this is video number 4 uh, of releases of reviews. The unboxing was the first video, and so this is the week-long series of the video in the week-long series. I'll get it together sooner or later. It's late, people, but anyway, we are, and I'm excited. I might be just tripping over my tongue because we are to one that whenever I saw that they were putting out this one, I got really surprised, boys and girls, because this is my era right here, people. This is Kiss Off the Soundboard in Des Moines, or Des
Des
Moines,
Moines.
Des Moines, uh, Iowa. And I was really excited about this. And this is what made me order. This is what made me order them. And look at this. Ooh, look at that. Ain't that pretty? That's the first one that's pretty.
And that's the first one that is actually almost 100% the color they said it was. I think it was supposed to be a little shinier, but it's at least the correct color.
Right. Yeah, it's a beautiful little purple. And so we can only assume that blue is next because we know they started down that rabbit hole of colors. So we can only assume blue is next. Um, and I didn't show. I'm going to go ahead and show you because I didn't show my shirt off in the last one. I didn't show my shirt off in Donington.
I forgot that you had the shirt.
I do have the shirt for Donington, so I'm going to go ahead and show the shirt for Donington, even though this isn't the Donington show. I'm going to show the shirt for Donington. This is the front. It's got a patch on it, and I showed this in my unboxing video that's going to have already have come out at the beginning of this week. And this is the back.
That's nice. I like they kept the color scheme of the purple.
Yeah, the show of shows, and then it's the color, and it's the famous the Kiss card, that's from the card set, and
that was hard not to get that shirt, dude. And just seeing you with it, I'm like, oh, did I make a bad choice?
Yeah. So this is Des Moines, and this is I'll show. Oh, well, that's Des Moines. This is the one I should have showed in the last video. This is Donington. So that the shirt I just showed is the one for this video, and this is Donington. It's red, and then the back is this is on the back of the Donington, and it says down there at the bottom, live at Donington, August 17th, 1996. So that's the Donington shirt. I show the shirts off. I don't have the other two shirts. I don't have Virginia Beach or Tokyo. All right, so I know you got your cards. I don't know if you showed them off already yet.
Oh, I will do that now.
All right, so this is Des Moines with Ace and Peter. It was recorded at Veterans Memorial Auditorium in Des Moines, Iowa on November 29th, 1977 during the Alive 2 tour. It was released on September the 9th, 2022 as the 4th album in the Off the Soundboard series in 2 LP purple vinyl. 17 songs in length, spanning the first 6 studio albums. Of course, it had to. The band included 13 songs off of the second 3 albums and only 4 off the first 3. Interestingly enough, 11 of these tracks appeared on the Donington off the Soundboard set list, performed by the same lineup 19 years later. How about that? 11 of the 17, they did them 19 years later. And I'll tell you, after having recently listened to the Love Gun Tour soundboard recording from August the 16th at Cow Palace in San Francisco, I honestly think that it should have been released. This should have been the era release that we should have gotten, the one from San Francisco, because it has songs like Take Me and Hooligan that we've not gotten on an official release this. And it would have been nice. But like I said, who knows? I think me and you've talked off camera about there's probably something, maybe they don't even own it.
Yeah.
Maybe that bootleg that's floating around. You can listen to it on YouTube if you just search Kiss San Francisco. And the funny thing is, the particular one from August the 16th, there's actually at the very end of the show, there's an announcement that Elvis had died because it was actually recorded on the day that Elvis passed away. So the
Mhm.
reason why, if it would have been that show, it would have meant so much to me, because Elvis's death was the catalyst for me becoming a Kiss fan,
Mm.
because I didn't know who Kiss was. I was too busy being an Elvis fan, and then Elvis passed away on a Tuesday on August the 16th. And then just 4 days later, I become a Kiss fan when I heard Detroit Rock. My grandma bought Detroit Rock City for me, and or bought Destroyer for me, and I became a Kiss fan for the first time after I heard Detroit Rock City. That was my official inception into the band. So it would have just been surreal to me to have a release in my hands of that, an official release in my hands of a show that was taped on the day that Elvis passed away. It would have made it
Mm.
so, like, very real to me. Um, but anyway, so they did 13 songs. They did 17 songs off the first 6 albums, 2 off the debut, 1 off of Higher Than Hell, 1 off of Dress to Kill. And then, since this was the Love Gun tour, they did 5 off Destroyer, 5 off of Rock and Roll Over, and 3 off of Love Gun. I think it's weird that it's the Love Gun tour and they only really do 3 songs off of it. They do a staggering 5 off Destroyer and 5 off Rock and Roll Over. So we'll get into these tracks. What I will say about this mix in particular, just kind of a global, is that it is not the best sounding of 2 of the albums. I still think, me personally, and it could be nostalgia, and just because this is my era, I would still rather listen to this than listen to Virginia Beach. Um, but it is very, if you listen to Alive 2 and then you listen to this, other than the mix not being like, now we know that they re-recorded part for Alive 2, a lot of Alive 2.
Yeah.
But if you listen, I'm talking about the sound and the tone of the instruments, the sound of Peter's drum, that snare, it has that distinct sound, and the way that the bass guitar is, or lack thereof sometimes, and the way the bass drum was recorded on this live album, the same way it was kind of recorded for Alive 2. The sound, the tone, and the overall sound of the mix, the sound of the recording is very comparable to Alive 2. So this is almost like the real Alive 2,
Yeah.
or
Yeah.
or even like the San Francisco recording could have been the real Alive 2, because it was recorded in that same era. It was recorded in August of the Love Gun tour. But now, having said that, the mix is not always the greatest. Ace is sometimes not, his solos are kind of buried. Peter's drumming is not always the greatest, and the sound of his drums is not always very well mixed. And sometimes Paul and Gene their vocals seem to be a little loud and very upfront in the mix. So
Mhm.
the mix is not the greatest. And even though the sound is not the greatest, the overall tone is not the greatest. It's kind of very much period
Yeah.
sounding.
I think that was the biggest thing that my takeaway was. This sounds a dumb sentence to say. It sounds very authentic of the time. Like, it sounds exactly how I would expect it to sound. You know,
Mhm.
I trying not to judge it in 2022 and going, oh my gosh, it sounds horrible. Well, it was 1977 when they were recording this. I can't imagine the tape device that had to be used to record this thing. It wasn't getting done digital. It's not getting compressed and filtered and all that stuff. It's raw from the soundboard. And if there's any mixing that was done to this, they probably only had so much to work with, and what you see, what you hear is what you get. So I'm trying not to take marks off on it and going,
Mhm.
oh, well, the playing is sloppy, or not the playing is sloppy. The instrumentation is sounding like it's
Mhm.
very old instruments. We're still in that, I don't want to say caveman, because it was sophisticated at 77, but the amps and the equipment that they're using today is not like it was back then. So
Right.
I'm trying to be in that frame of mind of going, okay, this is 1977. What were other bootleg and shows and other artists? What was Styx doing in 77? And you can kind of compare and go, oh yeah, they sound about the same as far as the tonality of all the
Mhm.
instruments.
Mhm. Yeah, and I think whenever I first heard this, and when I remember whenever "Let Me Go Rock and Roll" got released as the single, which I don't think was the best decision because
No,
we'll get into the individual songs and what we think about them later. But whenever it got released as the single, I saw a lot of criticism online about how bad it sounded, and like I said, Let Me Go Rock and Roll is not a fair representation of the album as a whole. But I was like, what did y'all expect? Did y'all expect this to sound like Donington? Did y'all
right.
expect this to sound like Tokyo? You know, it sounds better than Virginia Beach, but I mean, it's like, did y'all expect this was done in 77? And so I thought it got a lot of, and there, I saw some people that are like, once they started getting them and receiving them, people were going, hey, does yours during some parts of yours, does it sound like it's washing in and out? Does it sound like the sound's going kind of wavering back and forth from one speaker to the other? And I'm like, yeah, I noticed that too. This is also 45 years, almost 50 years old. It's
And
45 years old.
it's on a tape.
And it's on a tape.
TAPE.
It's on a tape. You know,
Right.
so it's like it's going to have its imperfections. That's part of its character. And you
Yeah.
know, and having said what you said, if you and this is a it's a mix that is appropriate for the period, but I honestly still think if you go and you listen to, like, if you go on YouTube and you queue up "Let Me Go Rock and Roll" or any song off this album, and then you jump immediately over and listen to that same song off of the San Francisco that was done, you know, prior to Alive 2. This was after Alive 2.
Mhm.
So that was done prior to Alive 2. If you go listen to that, it's like, wow, this actually tonality and mix wise, it sounds like the same period, which it was, sounds like the same equipment, which it was, but it sounds better. It's like, and why? Because they had a better mix that night. You know, they
Yeah.
didn't have digital boards where they could set it and it's like have scenes. It's like mixing boards today, and for a while, you set scenes. You can do something and you like save, and then so when you go back to that song, you hit that button and it goes right. Everything is the same. It sets it back to where it is, where an off the soundboard mix from one night to another could be as unique as fingerprints.
Right.
Different arenas produce different sounds, and so to compensate for that sound, they have to adjust things differently on the mixing board, and you don't hear that on the soundboard mix. You because you don't hear what they're hearing. You hear we only get what's actually recorded onto the tape.
Mhm.
So I thought that this sounded really good until I heard the San Francisco, and I'm like, well, it still sounds good, but San Francisco sounds better. So
Mhm.
but we're talking about this. We're not talking about San Francisco. We're talking about this. So they open with, which is what they opened with a lot during this time. They open with "I Stole Your Love," even after the Alive. I think it's kind of funny and kind of interesting that this is the Alive 2 tour,
Mhm.
and they chose not to kind of replicate the Alive 2 tour, the Alive 2 album experience with the tour. So
Yeah.
I would think, okay, we opened Alive 2. We opened it with Detroit Rock City, which that's not how they opened shows then. They Detroit Rock City was kind of a closer, an encore towards the end, and they opened with "I Stole Your Love." But then what they basically did was whenever they recorded Alive 2 and they mixed things around, they moved Destroyer to the beginning in front of King of the Nighttime World, like it is on the Destroyer album. They moved Detroit Rock City to the beginning. And then they stuck King of the Nighttime, then they stuck, not Shout Out Loud, but "I Stole Your Love" it's like side 3, isn't it?
Yeah.
So they moved it like way into the set, which is, kind of where I got used to it being just because of that. So,
Yeah, it's side 3, first song.
side 3 first song.
I stole your
Yeah.
love, Beth.
Yeah.
That's
I
the
Stole Your
running
Love
order
of
of it.
Beth.
Yeah.
Yeah. But they started with I Stole Your Love, which is how they did. And I've got my notes. Sounds great. I love the extended intro because they're getting down off of the risers. And I know that you guys love this song. I know Nico loves this
Oh my
song.
gosh, I think Nico made out with the album.
And Paul sounds great. The mix is pretty good overall, and it is very much a Live 2 era appropriate sounding. So starting off with "I Stole Your Love," I mean, you can't beat starting off with a song like that.
No, and that everything that we've had so far, this is refreshing to have something other than Deuce, Detroit
Mhm.
Rock City, Love Gun, open it up. It's like I Stole Your Love. Like I think a lot of us Kiss fans are enamoring, like throw this back in the set. If
Mhm.
they would revamp the tour, end of the road tour, I would love for this to start out. I blew Nico's mind once and say, can you imagine Paul flying out over the crowd to I Stole Your Love? That being said, 1977, this is appropriate for the tour. Just what a fantastic opening track. It opens Love Gun. I I love this version. So Nico's been dying for a version, an extended version of I Stole Your Love. So yeah, he's very, very happy with this one.
And then they go straight into King of the Nighttime World. And it's a great version of the song right next to the classic live version. Uh, I, my head, it kind of, when I'm listening to this, it's just because Alive 2 is so deeply ingrained in me. If I was a tree, it'd be like the seventh or eighth ring into the inner. So it's like almost to my core. And so it's like it's so deep in, it's a part of me. So when I listen to this or any other off the soundboard recording or video that's done during that time, Budokan, all the San Francisco, all these places, it's like my brain immediately starts comparing it to Alive 2, comparing it to performance, sound, tonality, everything. And this is a great version. I mean, it's right there with the Alive 2 version.
Yep, I would agree.
Ladies Room, Gene sounds really good. The band sounds good. You hear the flub of a bad. That's one thing I love about the soundboards is you hear the flub of a bad note just before they go into the first chorus. Where it's that part where he's like, it's like Peter's just kind of riding on the cowbell, and he does
Yep.
that roll, and that first note they come in with, it's like, it's a bad, and Paul's probably jumping. You know what I'm saying? They're not
Yeah.
Kiss does not stand still when they play. So
Mm-mm.
anything that you hear, it's hard to put your fingers down on the right chord and hit the right strings when you're 4 or 5 feet up in the air doing a split jump like Paul did during this time.
Oh yeah, yeah.
But yeah, there's a very bad flub of that note where the guitar comes in and hits that first note of the chorus. But I love that. That's part of to me, that is part of the charm of these off the soundboards that they're doing. And I think that's something that they intended is you're seeing them in the raw, mistakes and all, bad mixes and all. You're seeing them, and you're not going to get perfection. If you want perfection, go back and listen to Alive
Alive.
2.
Yeah, Alive 1, 2, and 3. I mean,
Yeah.
Paul said something in the interview. I don't know if it was in the summertime of an interviewer had asked, I think it was about a laser pointer or, would you ever release a show like that? And Paul says, why would we put out something with a mistake in it? And then that's going to be out there forever. So this is kind of one of those, is not to go back to Virginia Beach for a second, but as kind of poor as the mix that it is, it's a bootleg. If I'd have found Virginia Beach online and could download it back in 2004, I'd have been like, oh, I got the Virginia Beach show. Oh, listen to this thing. So the way that this is, and you hear some missed notes here or there, it's real, it's raw, it's live, and
Yeah,
there's nothing doctored about it. You want to hear the perfect thing? Listen to the studio album, like
right.
you said, throw in a live too. So I love it for what this is, blemishes and all.
If you want to hear Gene sing the right lyrics to the song every time, go listen to where he re-recorded the lyrics.
Right.
So next song, Firehouse. And I love Firehouse, but they freaking fly on this one. They play this, it's like dun 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 dun. It is so stinking fast, and it loses its soul to me, but it's Firehouse. But there's a part, Paul, if you listen, Paul's banter and his crowd massaging is at a tolerable point through this whole album for me. It's tolerable, but he makes me laugh because he says something here, and you know how Paul has that accent that he does whenever he's talking. You hear Paul like talking like on Instagram when he's tossing pizzas and stuff. He doesn't sound like he does when he's preacher Paul, in front of a crowd. And there's a line he says here at the beginning of Firehouse. He cracks me up. He goes, like I was saying before.
His New York accent is very thick. I think at a certain point, he realized I don't sound right talking like that. So he really worked on his accent and lost it.
Like I was saying before. It's like he reminds me. It's like I hear Shawshank Redemption. I hear Morgan Freeman. Like I was saying before.
That Andy Dufresne.
Yeah, that Eddie Dufresne. But they do play this one very fast, even faster than live. Ace's solos sound great, and he is up in the mix like he should be. And he still nails that solo playing as fast as they are. That so fast. But I still love it. I love Firehouse, and I'm glad it's on here. So, and then they go into Love Gun, and like I said, Love Gun sounds good. Most of the songs on here sound good. Paul's voice. The one thing that I noticed during this, and I'm gonna see if you agree with me. Love Gun on here, and like I said, I'm not the biggest fan of the live version, but Love Gun is whenever it starts singing, whenever Paul starts singing. The very first time I listened to this, I was in my car. I had to drive somewhere for work, and I was listening to it I had to go to Chapel Hill, which is about a 3-hour drive. So I was listening to it off the soundboards during that time. And this is the first one I listened to. I actually started and went backwards. I went from Des Moines all the way back to Tokyo. And whenever Paul starts singing Love Gun on here, this is the first song where I just kind of went, wow, his voice was just so powerful. It was just so, when he breaks into that, I really love you, baby. It's just like he had so much power, and his voice was just, his voice would get better before it got worse, but God, he was just so good. And I'm not like I said, I'm not the biggest fan of Love Gun, but this is a good version. Paul really kind of shows the power he has in his voice. This is the first time he kind of shows it on this album.
Yeah, ditto.
And then they go into Let Me Go Rock and Roll. And even though I love this song on this show, I feel like they rushed this one, and they really append or they really abbreviate this song. Yeah. They cut out the whole little the whole groove section.
Yep.
It's like and Gene is just over the top on it. Gene's over singing. Gene actually over-sings a little more on this album than Paul does. I mean, Gene is like he is just bought into the fact that he's Gene Simmons, he's the demon, and he's got that what I call Cookie Monster singing, growling, and yeah, and over singing. Like at the end of this, he's just like rock and roll. Oh, his voice is all cracking and everything. And I'm like,
Yeah.
Gene, pull it back a little bit, buddy. Just come back, take about 3 big steps back.
Yeah.
And like I said, I don't think, even though Let Me Go Rock and Roll was a single that was released, I don't think it was the best. I mean, they should have released freaking Love Gun.
Yeah.
If they had released Love Gun as the single, man, people would have got excited about this album a lot faster.
Oh, I think so too. Yeah.
Let's see. So yeah, Gene's over the top a little bit on it. And then they go into Making Love. And I always love to hear Making Love. It's one of my favorite. It's like Firehouse to me. It's one of my favorite songs. And you hear there's a flub on this one. And you being a drummer, you know, when you hear it, Peter's like, Peter. But they go, when it starts off and it's like, I just hate when the girl says, wait. And right after he says, wait, he usually hits the snare and the hi-hat. He starts, or snare and the cymbal. He starts on with that. Peter, in some way, weird shape or form, I actually was going down the road the other day doing snare or bass snare on my steering wheel. And Peter starts, instead of starting off with the snare, because it's on the 4.
Yeah.
I just hate when the girl says, wait, boom, it's on the 4. So, but he comes in on the 4, instead of coming in on the snare on the 4, he comes in on the bass on the 4.
Yeah, so, I thought that was me listening. Like, did I hear that right? Yeah.
So he's officially 1 note off. He's a quarter of a measure off starting the song. And by the time they get to Paul sing, where he says, I really want her by my side, the rest of the band has already compensated, because Peter never did. I'm like, how did they get back on time so fast? Did Peter hit the snare 2 times? Did he hit the bass 2 times? Because the only way for the drummer to get back on time when he comes in on the 4, which should have been a snare, comes in on the bass, the only way he would have been able to do that is if he would either skip the snare beat and hit the bass 2 times, or did 2 on the snare and skipped a bass hit. But I sat and I played it out. Rob, if you play it out, if you sit and you just boom, tap, boom. Peter is boom, tap. He never hits one or the other more than 1 time. So what that means is that 3 other men in the band compensated, and they did it within about 2 or 3 beats. I don't know how they did it. It almost sounds like there's a cut, but I know that there's not a cut, because they're not doing that much work to these things.
Yeah.
And it's such a small amount of time. There wasn't a bunch of stuff that they really could cut out. It's almost like somewhere in that little riff where they're going because whenever he goes wait and they hit the snare and he hits the bass, right after that they start the before they even get to the it's when they're doing the they had to cut a riff. They had to cut a note.
Cut a note, or they left a note open a little bit longer.
They had to do something, because they're back on time fast. And it's not due to Peter. Peter doesn't, because I was like,
he didn't change.
Did Peter get them back on time, or did they get themselves back on time? And they got themselves back on time. So it's I know that was just something that I actually sat and listened to and tried to figure out, and it wasn't Peter that did it. But they make a quick adjustment, and this one sounds great. It has a good speed. It's not played too fast. It's not played too slow. And Ace just freaking smokes this solo. It's one of my favorite Ace solos, and he just freaking smokes it. So yeah, Making Love, it's a good version. It's got a little flub at the beginning. Could have been worse, but it sounds good, and I like it. And then Christine 16. Christine 16, this song takes me back to my early inception Alive 2 feels, just the way it sounds. This album sounds like the Alive that we could have gotten, but rawer. It's a great version. And I love hearing Peter's background vocals on this album because he comes in with the Christine 16. He comes in like real high. And he just sounds so good. He sings that high harmony on Christine 16 and on some of the other songs. So, any notable notes so far for you?
No, so far so good. It's playing out like other than the small little flubs. Gene actually does pretty good on Christine 16.
Yeah.
I don't say he 100% nails the talking when I saw you coming out of school that day, but it's not bad. It's like, all right, because the song is still fresh and new for Gene. That normally a song that would be new and fresh for you might skip a little bit, but they've just recorded it. They've come off of Love Gun too, so Gene's has had time to get this down. So it sounds as probably as best as it's going to for this time.
Right. Yeah. He does get a little behind, and then towards the end of it, he's a little behind, and he just goes, "That day I knew," and he's already behind at that point. So he just, instead of going, "I got to have you," he don't have the time for the second one. So he just goes, "That day I knew, I've got to have you."
Yeah.
Because he would already started dragging a little bit. He's like, and I had good hopes for him because these days he blows it like right off the bat. But on this one, it was like the tut tut tut. I don't usually say things like this goes right, and I'm sitting here going, okay, all right, he's right there on it. But then there's a little bit of a too long a space. When I saw you coming out of school that day, I was like, oh, here we go. He's slipping, but it's better than what he's did further on down the road. You're right about that. Shock me. Every time I hear, we got a little surprise for you tonight, I just start smiling. And Paul's on this. He's even great. He sounds like my grandma. We got a little surprise for you tonight. Y'all like surprises? It's a great version of this. Ace sounds good. The song sounds good. His solo after is good, but most of the time I skip it once it gets into it because, like I said, it just becomes a visual thing, and it just becomes you're just listening to. It's like skip.
There's an Easter egg here. In this solo, Rocket Ride, part of it is played here. Which that would be the first time that any part of Rocket Ride has ever been played. That's just a little tiny little minuscule part of Rocket Ride, but in the early part of his solo, you can hear him start to play Rocket Ride. So I thought that was kind of cool.
Yeah, and there's another Easter egg concerning that later on too. Yep, I texted you about it. I'm like, holy crap! Did you hear this?
Yeah.
I texted Rick about it too, and Rick's like, oh crap! I just went back and listened to it, and I hear it because I was like, and it's we'll talk about that in a minute, but yeah, I noticed that too. It's you have to go. If you don't know what we're talking about, listen to Shock Me. Listen to the solo at the end, and then listen to the next song we're getting ready to talk about. So they go from Shock Me to I Want You. This is a really good version of this. Paul doesn't drag the pandering out to the crowd too much at the end, and like I said, he's kind of tolerable on a lot of his pandering and massaging of the crowd and stuff like that. He doesn't get too crazy with the whoa. He doesn't get too bad. And then the second little nugget to look for after the solo, where Paul goes, I want, before he does that, they stop and Ace plays almost all of the solo that he plays at the end of Rocket Ride,
Mhm.
before the drums come in,
Yep.
the big finish at the drums. He plays it right there, and I remember hearing that. I remember I was listening to it going down the road, and I heard that, and I was like, "Whoa, wait, back that up!" And I was like, "I know that. Where do I know that from? I know that." And then I backed it up and listened to it again, and I was like, "Oh crap, that's Rocket Ride." So,
Mhm.
uh, so he plays the part of his solo at the end of Rocket Ride during "I Want You" as well. So, and that's just kind of cool that Ace was like, you ain't letting me sing Rocket Ride during this show, but so I'm just going to start throwing in some lyrics.
Yeah, yeah.
And then that's one thing that I kind of found a little interesting is Kiss had just released Alive 2. They released studio tracks on
And they
Alive,
didn't play any of them.
and they didn't play any of them. It's like I don't get that. Why not play All American Man? Why not play Larger Than Life? Why not play Rocket Ride? Those are three good songs.
I
Those
thought
are
all
three.
three of them would have been there. In a Kiss world, the song that they would have played, you know what song they would have played? Wouldn't have been
Any,
Rocket.
any
Any
way you
way
want it.
you want it.
Any way you want it. Yeah, that's what they
Yeah.
would have played. They would have
That's what
played
they
any
would have
way you want
played. Yeah.
it. Yeah. And then after I Want You, it's Calling Dr. Love, great version. And I love it. And I love Gene. Like I said, Gene's over and embellishing. And I've just got in my notes here. I crack up when Gene goes, "'Cause I'm the doctor. Whoa, yeah." At the end of he kind of does that on the live too. "'Cause I'm the doctor. Wow, oh, yeah." He's a, Gene is just in full Gene mode during this point in time.
Mm.
Um, so then Shout It Out Loud. Shout It Out Loud later in the set feels like home to me, like back in 1977 home.
Mhm.
Peter's high vocals on the background vocals is gold. It's great version. It sounds like they're having fun during this. If you
Yeah.
listen to
Yeah.
it, they just sound like it almost like they're singing with smiles on their faces. And I know that the band wasn't in a good place during this time. They'd be getting on each other's nerves. They've been basically living with each other and constantly touring and right under the pressure of touring, writing songs, making albums, touring again. And so they've basically been living together for 5 years at this point, and we're on each other's nerves. But I like to just think of them, imagine in my own brain, just them smiling at each other while they're singing this song. I know they probably weren't. Peter was probably throwing drumsticks. Anybody that got in front of his drum
Yeah.
set.
Don't stand in front of me.
Don't stand in front of me. That's my space. But they just sound like they're having a good time. Then they go into God and Thunder, and the beginning is the audio gold that we didn't get on Alive 2. I understand why they cut it down because we can't see Gene spitting blood, but we can imagine it. And the organ that comes in
Oh
and
yeah.
reminds me of an old Bela Lugosi horror movie.
Yes.
You just think of Gene being the Dracula, in the early promotional stuff about Gene, they called him the vampire. He wasn't
Yeah.
before he was the demon, he was the vampire with the high Bela Lugosi cape and everything.
Red. Yep.
Yeah, the red. And I just was just that's where that's why the demon, I know that they made him out to be the demon, and a demon sounds more scary than a vampire. But I never understood because, like, you see old pictures of Gene, he's got a little crypt in his hands, and he's got the bat wings on his face, and he's got he had the bat wings under his arms for a while, and then all of a sudden he becomes a demon. Yeah, I used to being a Dracula, being a vampire made more sense to me because why else would he be spitting out blood? He's spitting out the blood of the people that he drank blood from.
Right.
That's what my mind thought when I was a kid, or that
Yep.
it was cow's blood or chicken blood or whatever, and all the rumors of what it actually was. But I love then that organ comes in when they put that effect on his bass and it sounds like an organ. And once the song starts, it's like it's Alive 2, God of Thunder to me, but rawer. It
Yeah.
has a rawer sound to it. And I think Peter's solo on this is great. It actually is kind of a cut down version of the Alive 2 solo, which I like listening to it and being like, okay, that part's on the Alive 2 solo. Okay, that
Mhm.
part's not on the Alive 2 solo. So it kind of keeps me entertained because I'm sitting there listening to it and going, that's on Alive 2, that's not, that's on Alive 2, that's not, and kind of picking and choosing. But is it, you know, at the end of the day, it's like any other Peter Criss solo. Like you said, he's
Yeah.
just moving around from parts of the set. And let me play on these two top toms here for a little while. Now let me play on these bottom two toms. Now let me hit every single, let me hit every cymbal in the kit. Now let me sound like I'm a train going down the road on the snare. You know,
Yeah.
that's basically that's Peter Criss solo right there. So, Rock and Roll All Night is next. Rock and Roll All Night sounds really good on here. It sounds like they're having a blast, and at least it sounds like it. Peter again on the high vocal and party every day.
Yeah.
He's
Yeah.
doing
Yeah.
that and party every day, and then there's part was I want to rock and roll all night, and you hear Peter going all night, man, all night.
And this is the classic Gene going, I.
Yeah, yeah. And a little banner, yeah, and I got that
Gene,
show.
stop.
That show that y'all did where somebody'd be like, I, and you'd be like, I?
I'd put the I anytime one of us said I had that in there. Yeah.
Yeah, that was classic. I love that. You guys gotta watch, you guys gotta listen to their videos or their podcasts. It's so funny. But once again, they sound like they're having fun. It's probably out of all the four that we've listened to so far, it is probably my favorite version of Rock and Roll All Night.
I will agree. Yep.
It just has a freshness and a newness to it, even though it was, and it was relatively new, but it's just, I don't know. It's just, it has a something about it. I can't really put my finger on it, but Detroit Rock City, it sounds good to hear this, to be late in the set, as they played it back then. The sellers are good. And Peter's a drumming full on this one. I love it. Sometimes Peter, he's sometimes a little sloppy on this
Yeah.
show, but man, hearing Peter doing those little triplet things that he does on the bass drum during Detroit Rock City, and then realizing that Peter Criss was a single pedal player, that was
Yeah.
just his foot. That that's
Yep.
he's doing those little triplets before each snare, and he was a drumming fool whenever he played Detroit Rock City to its full potential.
Yep.
And he does a really good job on this one. I like this version of Detroit Rock City. And then next to the end, we have Beth. Peter sounds decent, even though he wailed. He just wailed it out on DR. Well, I know what I mean here. It's kind of funny to me that they almost handicap him. He almost handicaps himself by playing Beth right after Detroit Rock City.
Yeah.
If I was a drummer and I just come off playing Detroit Rock City, now you want me to come down behind my drums and sing a song, a ballad? I'd be,
I just
be,
ran a race and you want me to sit and drink tea? No, man, I'm gasping for air. I need some water.
Right. And he sounds decent on it, and he holds up until the end. Towards the end when he does, and he kind of goes, he kind of just loses that part. But at least he sung the right words. I mean, he's been known to not sing the right words.
Yeah.
To his own song. And then Black Diamond. And this is the part to me that kind of makes me smile too, because up to me in my head, even though there were some songs off of Alive on here, like God of Thunder and stuff like that, there were some songs, not God of Thunder, like what songs? Firehouse and
Oh,
Let
you're
Me Go
talking the
Rock and
first Live. Yep.
Roll. Yeah, so off of Alive. There were some songs off of Alive. To hear them close with Black Diamond rather than closing with Rock and Roll All Night. To close
Yeah.
with Black Diamond, that is, so I've got here in my notes, closing an Alive 2 set with an Alive classic rocker. Yes, please. The band sounds great. Peter sounds great. And it's like they took an Alive 2 album and sprinkled Alive songs in it, and then they closed it with an Alive classic. And I think it's just great. It's a great way to close the album for me.
Definitely.
They sound good. All right, so my final thoughts on Des Moines. Like I said, the sound is period acceptable. I don't expect it to sound like Donington, and I'm a realist, and I don't expect it to sound like Donington. I don't expect it to sound like Tokyo. It actually sounds better to me than Virginia Beach. This has to be probably, this is up there to me. It's not perfect, but this is probably, well, I just say that to me, this is the one to beat. I know that I gave Donington like a 9 or something like that. This is probably 9.5. I can't give it a 10 because it's not perfect. If this would have been, if I would have been holding, I hate to say it because I know, but you're not holding it in your hand. But if I'd been holding San Francisco from the Love Gun tour in my hand, this would be a 10. It would be perfect because that soundboard is freaking amazing.
Yeah.
But now, having said that, this with its flubs and with its not quite as good as San Francisco's mix quality. Sound quality is right there for the period, but mix quality, I give this a 9.5 for me. So, and also this is like with the Tokyo for you. This is nostalgia for me. This is 8-year-old Brant listening to Kiss Alive 2 for the first time. This is Kiss Alive's 2 cousin that doesn't have as much money and isn't cleaned up as much. But I still love the cousin anyway. So I give it a 9.5. And so it becomes my number one so far, followed by Donington, then followed by Tokyo, and then followed by Virginia Beach. So we'll see if they put out something that's going to beat this. But I can tell you right now, it's going to be tough.
While I'm still thinking on it, another little oddity that we haven't had a chance to point out, the lightning bolts at the end of Des Moines, and then the typewriter flub effect on the D in World, the D in Ladies Room, the S, where it looks like it's double stamped.
Oh yeah,
the
you're
S
right.
The S in Christine 16. Again, a lot of the D's are hit, like the typewriter hasn't quite hit it. So I thought that was a nice little touch if I can get it in frame there. So I was trying to filibuster there for a moment, trying to figure out where I'm putting this. I still really don't know. Peek behind the curtain at the time that we are recording this right now. In 2 days, we will record our thoughts on this show. So I kind of want to say, well, I really don't know where I'm putting it right now. Having just listened to it, being on your show, we'll see what I say again in 2 days. By the time you guys hear our show, I want to put it after Donington, because you're talking about nostalgia. This is where you were when this show is coming on. Me getting to see the reunion tour in Tiger Stadium and just the whole frenzy that was. So I've got just an affinity and an affection for the reunion tour. And then, like I said, with Tokyo. So right now I'm probably going to go Tokyo, Donington, Des Moines. I think that's going to change over time the more that I play it. There's something that Rick said in one of his videos that there is just, like you said, there's a nostalgia, there's a feel, there's an energy that I feel like that's coming off of this that goes, this is Kiss. Even as I'm saying it, I'm convincing myself that maybe it needs to be in the second slot. So I don't quite entirely know where I'm at with this one yet, but this is a darn good one. Just for what it represents for the band, for people going, this is why I fell in love with Kiss. This era of Kiss is big for a lot of people, and I totally get it. And I had a blast listening to this, and I had a blast being on the show going through these with you.
Yeah, I will tell you this too, and there is something about the chemistry of the 4 original members, and there is even more of a chemistry between, even more so, the 4 original members before the split. The magic, there was some magic that came back whenever they reunited, but
it wasn't 100% though.
It wasn't the same magic as what was, from 74 to 79, 73 to 79.
77 is the pinnacle for this group. Like, they could do no wrong. They're even though there's a little bit of infighting going on, they're still working as a well-oiled machine right here.
Yeah, they are. And so I think that's what this causes this album and this era to stick out for a lot of people. All right, man. Well, I appreciate you being along with me on this series, and I'm looking forward to you being in videos in the future. I'm looking forward to being in some more of you guys in the future.
Yeah, definitely.
I enjoyed my time over there with you guys. And so wrapping this one up, give us your social media handles and where everybody can find you, and we'll get out of here.
You can follow us on Twitter at RBTE Podcast. We're on Facebook at facebook.com/RightBetweenTheEyes Podcast. And anywhere you hear audio podcast, Google, Stitcher, Apple Podcast, you can find us, Spotify. And then we've got a YouTube channel that we're slowly building up there. And I used one of your tricks for our Crazy Nights video at the time that we're recording this on the 30th. Tomorrow, the 31st already? Or was it October 1st, actually? You can see a video part for our Crazy Nights video we just shot. So awesome. There you go.
All right, so that's all for this one, guys. We will see you in the next one. And Rob, thank you for, like I said, thank you for sitting in the passenger seat for this ride with me this week. It's been a fun week going through these, and we've had a good time. I'm looking forward to seeing you guys when we do the next one. And Rob, looking forward to hanging out with you again soon.
Definitely, brother. Appreciate it.
All right. We're out of here, everybody. Take care.
See ya.